Welcome back, everybody, to your daily update to the state of the Lether Empire. And it's fallen, and we call it an Edor Empire now. For how long? Well, I guess you'll have to continue watching until at least Reaper's Gale. Just saying that. Anyway, to continue, yes, I just finished the book, and I'll see if I can wrap all my thoughts into this today. Otherwise, you'll have to wait for the next one before I start with the Bone Hunters. Quick update on the scarf. Well, it's not, a whole lot longer, but I didn't do much today. So, yeah, there we are. And also, I feel like showing you how a scarf is growing is not exactly news to you at this point. So yeah, let's do this. Cheers. All right. So yes, we have the big battle, which is not actually that big a battle, because it's all weapons of mass destruction, or in this case, magic of mass destruction, which is just as bad, or maybe even more brutal. And yeah, I've spoken about this before, that a lot of times the magic, or this like mass destruction magic used, shown in the Malazan Book of the Fallen, is very much reminiscent of how newer modern weapons influenced warfare, especially in its effect on the people that wield it. In a way, I mean, that's, I guess, the more important thing is like how it changes warfare, especially for the soldiers. I mean, we already know it kills thousands, tens of thousands of people. But what does it actually do to a soldier if they unleash that or fight in a war where these kind of things are possible? It's like, what does it do to you as a like soldier on the ground if you suddenly have nuclear weapons and can use them and see what they do? Or the same when you are like in the trenches in World War One, and suddenly your side is unleashing gas on is unleashing gas on the enemy, and you see this like yeah, slaughter on a previously unimaginable scale. And that's something that I feel, I mean, the nuclear weapons kind of thing is not yet the thing there. I feel it's more like the idea of like weapons like gas and stuff like that, and to see how that affects people, even the winners, in a way. So I feel that obviously it shows up again. We see the whole power dynamic between Rulad and Hanan Masag shift some more. And one thing that I feel is like the entire last chapter, or like last 2 or 3 chapters, show once again something that I feel the Malazan Book of the Fallen is extremely good at. Stephen Erickson is extremely good at, and that is writing book endings that are extremely cinematic and extremely satisfying on an emotional level, without actually like without having like really clear-cut winners or losers. There's no black and white good ending or anything like that. And that's something that we saw before in House of Chains and in Memories of Ice. I'm not so sure about, well, Deadhouse Gates definitely not does not have like a good ending, but even in a book where it's sort of the good guys win, like Memories of Ice or House of Chains, we see that victory comes at a really, really steep cost, at a really high cost. And in all these like small like plots that we follow along with all these different viewpoints on usually different sides, well, not always on different sides, we have very few insights onto the Panyan Seer in Memories of Ice, but in general, we see that the overall big victory, or whatever, comes at a really, really terrifying cost to the actual people on the ground. And we see that once again within within Midnight Tides. We see like, yes, the on a strategic level, the Edur win Rulad ends up as emperor. The Lethery are beaten. All of these things work out, but does it feel like victory to anyone in that group? Like, I mean, who really feels like they have won at the end of Midnight Tides? Hanan Masak? Nope. He's crippled and not on the throne. Rulad Sengar? Hell no. He's insane. And in his like saner moments, he realizes how broken he is. He hasn't won. Who else? Like literally, no one wins there. But possibly the errand, although I'm not quite sure with the errand. We'll need to look in the future, I guess, to see, find out how much he has won because he tries to stay like impartial in a way. And by impartial, I mean just standing on the side and nudging things in the direction that he just feels like. Detachment is just a mask there, right? So yeah. Anyway, a lot of god killing is going on in this chapter, which once again is obviously something that we kind of realized before, that the meaning god is kind of different in the Malazan world to our reality. So that, yeah, you can just kill gods. Also, I love the situation where Ubalala Pang just wrestles and kills one of his gods, of the Tublakai gods, by just cracking his ribs and squeezing him to death. And I'm just like, that is just like to outstubborn a already stubborn Tublakai god. It's just, well, it's fucking impressive is what it is. Anyway, all of these things come together. Another thing that Midnight Tides is once again really good at, it's the same thing that we already saw once again in Memories of Ice, and I feel like those two have similar endings, not fully similar endings, but in a way that a lot of the tragedies and the tragic parts of the ending are basically by sheer fucking circumstance, by sheer chance. It's like someone doesn't see, like looks up a second too late, someone mentions something a second too late, someone just stumbles into the wrong street, and so forth. And suddenly people are dead that really didn't need to actually have anything to do with the whole situation, and, well, just suddenly are dead. Dumb shit like that. Which obviously is a fact of nature. A lot of, like, most things in life seem, on the grand scale, seem meaningless. It's like us who, put our own, like, narratives into those things, but most things are just meaningless. Like, most tragedies are meaningless, is what I'm trying to say. Not everything is meaningless. Don't get me wrong. I'm not that bad today. But the thing is, like, a lot of situations is like that could have been avoided with like no big effort. It was just dumb luck. And a lot of that once again shows up here. It's like he showed up in Memories of Ice when Corlat doesn't look up quickly enough to see all the army flying into the city, and the bridge burners fly into the city. It happens here once again, where situations just like, sheer chance suddenly means that Bug is a second too late because he doesn't think of something for a moment, or yeah. Earlier on, Bryce Benedict, for whatever reason, forgets to mention that Kettle is dead or is becoming alive now again, and that like prevents a lot of stuff going on. So yeah, that once again is, I feel, is one of those poignant lessons that the Malazan Book of the Fallen in general is very good at teaching, because in a lot of fantasy books that we read and we use, like, usually destiny, the thing that the like Lethery believe in, but destiny, fate, and things that Terry Pratchett so aptly called a narrative causality, are very important. Like, Pratchett obviously makes fun of it a lot of times by actually spelling it out. But yes, we usually, with a lot of books we read, there's not that much stuff that just happens because why the fuck not, right? Because people make dumb mistakes. There's no. It's something that I feel can sometimes be difficult to get behind, is like the sheer randomness of the universe, because it often doesn't make for a really good story unless you actually manage to infuse it with like a larger meaning or something behind that, because what we usually expect when we read a book is we expect some kind of meaning, some kind of coherence in a way, unless we're reading some really experimental shit, which then obviously has different ideas behind it again. But the point there is, usually in a narrative, in a book that we read, or a movie that we watch, most things have a direct, like, are tidied up in a way, because we have limited space, we have limited numbers of words in a book, we have limited page space, we have limited time in a story, in a movie, so we cannot just show all the random bullshit that happens around that. So we have, over time, I feel, gotten used to the fact that the events in stories that we consume all make sense and have reasons why they are happening. So it feels oftentimes unsatisfying if shit just happens because, well, people were to, yeah, because, yeah, chance, basically. Now, obviously, there's a big difference between the chance in Memories of Ice and chance here, because here, the god of chance, our good friend, the errant, who has sort of this power over, like, nudging things, pushing and pulling things, and so forth, is an active participant in a way. We don't know how active he is, but he certainly is an active participant. And that definitely makes a difference. It's obviously something that we only, like, sort of know in hindsight, because it takes until almost the end of the story that we realize that he really is the this god with that power and does influence a lot of things in that way. But definitely that's sort of the thing. There's like, how much, and that's a very difficult question to answer, like, how much of the tragedy within this, the last chapters of Midnight Tides, is actually chance, and how much of it is a god who, being the kind of god he is, just doesn't fucking care and thought it would make, I don't know, poignancy. He says that himself at some points, like that he's drawn towards poignancy, and he just like loves those scenes, which is obviously why Bryce Beddick drinks the poison that the king and the first eunuch drink. It's not like, I love the fact, because that's sort of the same thing there. I guess that's sort, you could read that, I feel, as Erickson's stab at Terry Pratchett's narrative causality, where when Pratchett, you sometimes have those situations where it's like, this happened because narrative causality. It's like, if something is a million to one chance, then it definitely will happen, because obviously a million to one chance always, because, yeah, but only if it's exactly a million to one chance, like you get in Guards, or these other things that Pratchett usually points out that always happen, because we're so used to those tropes in a way. And on the other hand, we have here the errand, and he says it's drawn towards poignancy, and yes, it makes a very impressive dramatic picture. It's like, if the ending of Midnight Tides were a Shakespearean drama, a Shakespearean tragedy, then of course Bryce Beddick would have to drink the poison. And Erickson kind of, plays with that and subverts that by making it obvious that, yes, this did not just happen because tragedy. This did happen because a god who enjoys tragedy, or like theatrical tragedy, I would say in this case, stood by and said, "Oh, that's a good idea. This would look much better if I nudged him to drink that shit." So yeah, there's that. All right. What else to talk about? There's a lot to talk about, so I'm not sure how much I'll actually, manage to capture here. There's obviously a big thing about Teho and Bug that we need to talk about at some point. And I might actually want to elaborate on that, because the thing there is, Tehol is this genius. We're all agreed that he's a genius. But in a way, up to a certain point, his genius plan only works because he has an elder god working as his manservant. We're not going to talk about why that is cool or whatever, but a lot of the stuff he manages to do so secretly is because he has that elder god working on his side. So the question obviously would be, is like, in how far is Tehol Bedict a role model or someone we could aspire to? Because A, we would need to be really smart, and B, we would need to have an elder god as our manservant who we can terrorize all the time. Obviously, on the other hand, that's just like really, really important, that analytic. You have no idea how boring it can be to be immortal in a way. That bit I feel is also like very interesting, which kind of shows in a way what Bug does compared to Lady Envy, who sort of, has decided to make her own entertainment to make immortality and eternity kind of interesting. And on the other hand, you have Bug, who has realized that he could just, hang out with humans, and that can actually, if you find the right human being, can actually be also really, really interesting in a way. So, well, there's that. Um, but yes, once again, we at one point we need to talk about the idea of the supernatural help being vital. Is it kind of goes to the same thing with when I said what Karsa Olong does only works because Karsa Olong is Karsa Olong and has all these special powers. It's he gets away with being the kind of person he is, Karsa Olong, because he is basically invincible at this point because of all these other things. He's an amazing. He's chosen by the crippled god. He has all this stuff going around, going on around himself. We'll probably find out even more in that Witness trilogy whenever it comes out, like later this year, the first one at least. But until then, he he is not a realistic character in the like. In a way that anyone else could get away with that kind of thing, similar to Conan the Barbarian, who's also sort of like beyond, like, superhuman in a way. And in a similar way, Tehol Bedict is not a regular human being because he has this external helper who has literally godlike powers. So there's that to be considered. At some point, yeah, I feel like at some point I'll gonna, look into that a bit more. Anyway, that's another thing we that I wanted to mention that I found was kind of important. One more that I find really interesting is that whole situation with Fear, Troll, Sengar, and Seren Pedak. Because it's sort of acknowledged that there's an outside influence leading Troll to find Fear, leading them both to actually Seren Pedak's house, probably an outside influence moving Troll to give Seren Pedak the sword and everything. And they're like, is that also the errand? Is there some other force out there directing people? And that's a question that I feel can't really be answered here. I have a suspicion. There, but that would be spoilery. It's still just a suspicion. So maybe I'll get back. Maybe I'll remember to get back to it when I come to the point where my suspicion can be revealed spoiler free, is what I'm trying to say here. So there's definitely that. What else should we talk about? The end of Halbedict is super tragic in a way because it's like he's so close to at least like talk to Tehol. Would talking to Tehol make things better? Maybe for him. We don't know. But that's the cruelty and the brutality. And like in this story, I think one of the saddest moments for me is like that not even Hull, that driven poor bastard who was used all the while and whose like honesty and idealism basically fucked him over again and again and again. He doesn't get closure. He just gets killed by a Nerek without even understanding any of the things. That's just so sad. Like we as readers kind of get why the Nerek kills him. But yeah, that's just so fucking sad for me. I feel like in a way, and that's like something that we need to probably think about some more when you have the when you have the Bedic brothers and the Sengar brothers, obviously. Hal is closest to Fear. Not only is he like the oldest, but he's also like the straight one, the super moral one who's breaking under these things. And yeah, Fear has that walking away moment now at the end of Midnight Tides. He obviously builds himself a new goal to actually go forward to and do all these things. So yeah, that will, I see that parallel there. It obviously is, the question is Bryce most like is Bryce most like Ruland? And there's obvious like ideas. If you look at how those characters all interact in a way, and mirror each other, that's obviously interesting to have the duel between Bryce and Rulad as well, which, you know, ironically, in the end, it's Bryce who dies there. Although, I would say, be aware of the fact that someone loses a finger and someone else who can't really be trusted, or as so it seems, found that finger, and we'll see what that means in the end. Anyway, so there's that as well. What else do we need to talk about? Well, we finally actually officially know that it's Silcha's ruin hiding in that barrow, who was obviously also the ghost that they meet, like where that Seren and Burg the Pale meet, and so forth. That's pretty cool. He obviously has one of one of the best lines there near the end when they're talking about Hood, when it's Iron Boss saying Hood's balls, and Shurkelan is like, yeah, who's Hood and his balls, and the Lord of Dead, and yes, he does have balls. So I guess that question has finally been answered. How hoary they are is something that we'll need further books to elaborate on, but anyway, the ballsiness of Hood has been verified by by someone who has a lot of clout, I would say, and two swords, and those are, they are like clout, just more effective, I'd say. Okay, so there's that. What else? Okay, one thing that I found kind of problematic in a way, or problematic, not too problematic, but difficult to work through, is Udinas being taken over by the Loki Vival, and to come to the rescue of Silcha's ruin and all that stuff. I feel like my issue there is that sort of we don't get, since Udinas is still unconscious at the end of Midnight Tides, we don't get his thoughts on the whole matter. So he basically is forced to betray Rulad by the Vival, who just takes over and forces him away. And we see all the outcome of that. We see all those terrible like effects of that, but we don't get Udina's voice on this. Now, obviously, you can see this as a deliberate way to look at it. I'm almost sure that's how you should read it, is to look at it as a deliberate showing that a certain part of that people like in slavery and Udinas is obviously still a slave, and there's the idea that those people, that oppressed people, and something that you find a lot of times in colonial and post-colonial studies, that idea that the subaltern and the voiceless don't have voices, so it makes sense that the quintessential slave here, Udinas, the quintessential slave, doesn't have a voice in this situation, is just moved around by outside forces, and we don't even get his thoughts on the matter, basically. That's a way you can read that, and I understand why that works. It just leaves me unsatisfied at the end, is what I'm trying to say here. But since he's only unconscious, I'm pretty sure we'll get his thoughts on the matter at some point, and they will be long and self-pitying and grumbling and difficult to stand, just like always. What else should we look at the end of Midnight Tides? Well, one thing is that Rulad Sengar is not yet shown. So there's that. It'll still take a while, I guess. So we still don't know where we stand timeline-wise compared to... so we're still not reached the point that is the end of House of Chains, because it's not even the beginning of House of Chains in the timeline. Or at least not the beginning. I think it's the prologue, or at least large parts of House of Chains outside the Carson narrative. So yeah, that bit is like an information that I feel is important to keep in mind. We also have this. Well, the situation at the end is pretty, like the epilogue is pretty satisfying, with Mael being just really pissed and just beating up the crippled god. So yeah, that shows how human, in a way, Mael as an elder god has become, and the fact that they just decide to go on with the partnership of Tehol and Bug is pretty cool. What else was there that was very important? I think. Let me think. Well, there's a shit ton of magic being thrown around, and the end of the Cedar obviously is also tragic. What else? I don't know. I can't think of anything right now, so I feel we'll probably have a oh shit, I forgot a lot of stuff video coming tomorrow or Sunday or Monday before we dive into the Bone Hunters. Until then, I wish you a great Friday. Have a great weekend. And I'll talk to you probably tomorrow. Cheers.